What's the plan? Get a decent job, make enough money to get a home, raise a family, save up, and retire? And then what? Relax, go on trips, enjoy nice things? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And that's kind of the standard American vision of a good life. But is it the Catholic one? Well, what does St. Paul tell us? If you were raised with Christ, seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Think of what is above, not of what is on earth. And then, of course, Jesus' parable about this man who dies the very night he gets to retire. So what's going on? Am I about to tell a church full of retired people that retirement is bad? Not really, but kind of. The problem isn't as simple as just saying, oh yes, it's good or it's bad. What Jesus and St. Paul are getting at is not really about wealth. It's about the motivation, purpose, and priorities in life. What's wrong with what this rich man does? Nothing says that he broke any particular commandments. So why is Jesus so harsh? Because the man has lived for the wrong thing. Himself. Rest, eat, drink, be merry. These aren't bad things. In fact, all of them are good and necessary, and on some occasions, God actually commands people to do them. The problem is that none of those are the point of life. That's what Jesus is getting at when he's saying that this man was not rich in what matters to God. What matters to God is what is truly good for us. What matters to God is that we fulfill our ultimate purpose, happiness, communion, love. Yes, God made us to be happy. Now, original sin made that more difficult in this world, but the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ made it possible in a limited way in this life, and in an eternal way in the next. And getting to that happiness requires grace. It requires dealing honestly with sin. And most importantly, it requires repeatedly making the choice to do what really leads to happiness, to authentic spiritual joy. Yes, a comfortable life full of good food, drink, and fun make us happy in a way. But does it really last? Where is that happiness when we die? Gone. And everything that contributed to that happiness, all that wealth, to whom does it belong? And that's Jesus' point. That's the point of the first reading, that everything is vanity. We don't mean obsessed with our looks. We're talking about vain as in the sense of pointless. Everything is vain because it all disappears when death comes along. But if we are rich in what matters to God, if we build happiness on eternal things, we transcend that vanity and find that even death cannot take the joy away. This is the reason for St. Paul's harsh commands. Put to death, then, the parts of you that are earthly: immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, the greed that is idolatry. That list of things promises all kinds of false happiness and can give you some small taste of it. But it's not authentic. And greed in particular is not just the desire to have money. It's that unceasing desire for more. It's that sense that just a little more and I'll be set. The problem is when we get that little more, we want still more. It's a pretty common reality that people from just above poverty until making $1 million a year all say, oh, they need about 15% more. Nobody seems satisfied with what they're getting. And Paul calls this greed idolatry because it reveals that we don't actually trust God. To say that much more and I can take care of myself is really a version of saying I don't actually need to depend on God, because I can take care of myself. It's also idolatry because of what it says about our reason for work. Why do you work? Why do you labor? This goes back to that opening question, what is the plan? To make enough money to make myself and my loved ones comfortable. But your comfort doesn't really matter. It's not the point of your life, and it will always fade. What is the right reason to work, to labor? For love. Love of God, love of neighbor. Work because God made us to work in the garden, to care for creation even before sin was a thing. Work because by your labor you provide some good or service for other persons made in God's image. Work because you contribute to the good of others and because it helps you to provide for your loved ones. This is where we come to that question of retirement. What is it? Do we mean that you no longer work? Well, if your reason for working is to just get comfort and pleasure, it makes sense that you stop once you have enough of those. But if your reason for working is love, why stop? Do we really think that once we get to a certain age or wealth, it's okay to stop loving? I hope not. The call of a Christian is to love always. It's to keep growing in love until you die. We must never retire from love. So is retirement in a typical sense ever okay? Well, that depends on what you mean. If by retirement you spend the rest of your life being comfortable and focused on yourself, then no, it's not okay. If retirement means that you step away from a specific career or company or work track so that you can spend your time laboring for love in a different way, well then yes, why not do that? It can be downright holy to get away from a certain kind of labor so that you have the freedom and ability to work in a more authentically loving way. And if age and physical ability prevents you from labor, of course it's right to stop. All of us will eventually learn or relearn the lesson that we are dependent, ultimately dependent on God. But even then, we are not exempt from the command to love God and neighbor. The labor of love simply changes. It always adapts to whatever we're capable of where we are. Prayer, redemptive suffering, sharing of wisdom, spending quality time with loved ones. These can all be labors of love, even in our limitation. There is no time or place in this life when we are done. If your plan is to get to that place, you've fallen for a lie and a trap. Being rich in what matters to God is about continually striving to grow in faith, hope, and love. Sometimes that is getting and using wealth for good things. A good home, education, medical treatment, a beautiful church, outreach to the poor. These things take money. And for those who are truly poor, a little bit of money makes a huge difference in their ability to love. And even quality time found in rest or vacations or hobbies, these can be love. Money can be used for love, but all too often we use it as a way to avoid the risk of real love. So growing in that, growing in love, often requires us to give away our wealth. It's not really ours anyway, it's God's. But the point is not that it's a sin to be rich. It's very dangerous, but not necessarily a sin. The point is that regardless of our material wealth, we should be rich in the right things. Knowledge of the truth, habits of prayer and worship, real dependence on God, acts of mercy like evangelizing, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, enduring wrongs patiently. The rich man could have done these things and become truly rich. The point is that money isn't the point. Love is. God is. And the love that comes from God never retires.